I've had this same story that my parents also share with me, that I've had going on ever since I was little. For the longest time, I always thought it was a dream, but it was more vivid and real than your imagination could ever conjure up. It begins with me, lying in my bed as a little boy, when a bright light suddenly erupts and shines through my window. Then my window opens, and these tall, translucent, very skinny beings enter my room. 4 of them, to be exact. 2 on my left, and 2 on my right. Their faces are indistinguishable, emanating pure light. 4 of them approach my bed simultaneously, almost perfectly choreographed with how they're standing and the movement they make. They approach my bed, nearly a few feet away from me, and that's when I'm engulfed by a white light. The next thing I know, I'm lying on the next thing I can remember is I'm lying naked on a steel gurney or a steel table. Maybe it wasn't a gurney. I can't recall it having any wheels, but it was some sort of slab of steel or metal. I don't remember, but it wasn't cold like you would expect it to be. And these same beings, now more than 4, were surrounding me, standing all around me, and a bright, round, circular, white light overhead, shining down on me, enveloping my vision. These beings, from what I can remember, didn't do anything to me physically. They just surrounded me, spoke in a language I had never heard before in my life, with a kind of voice that I can't even accurately describe. It wasn't like a human voice, where it's either deep or high-pitched. It was almost like multiple voices, simultaneously speaking at once, if that makes any sense. Like the voice had no real definition, but yet there were still words being produced in its own language. I believe that the words or the voices were telepathic, as each of the faces were indistinguishable in features, just all emanating light. This went on for some time, before I was engulfed in a white light again, the same one as before, and I would wake up, soundly in my bed, with all my clothes on, just as I was when I had left. The odd thing about this occurrence is I never felt anything like fear, anything negative. It was always a numbness, a curiosity. I told my parents about it, and they seemed to have known, because it's happened to them too, nearly identical. As I've gotten older in life and have aged, I've sought answers, and while many do not have it, many have told me, from what their experiences are, that it sounds like I have dealt with alien abductions. Curious about this finding, I reached out to other supposed alien abductees, and wouldn't you know it, they've all had very similar experiences as mine. Not quite the same. Some being very horrifying and traumatic, while others, they can't really remember much, but nearly identical situations as I. Mine happened often. I can't give you a repeating pattern because, quite frankly, I don't even know or remember how much. But I could tell you it happened enough times that it was a reoccurring thing for years. This happened every time, just as I described to you, over and over. Always at nighttime, when I was asleep in my bed, from the ages of 5 to 9 years old. And it happened to my parents too. But the odd thing is, my parents and I never sat down and discussed what it is, what it could be, or what it might be. We just all kind of acknowledged that it was a thing, and that was that. No discussing it. I don't know if that was on my parents' end, for the lack of fear or lack of understanding. I'm not sure. And for a while, in my early teenage years, once it had stopped happening, I had suspected for a while that it was indeed my guardian angels. But as I got even older and grew a greater understanding, I realized there must be something more, that could not be the case. I don't know if there's a very specific reason that these beings showed interest in me at such a young age, or what they did with me, since I have no memory of what was going on up there, or wherever it is they took me. I can only assume it was back on their ship, if that's where I was taken to. I'll never know. But my therapist suggested writing this out, just to kind of help process it more and more, and flush out any feelings that might negatively come along with the experience. Thank you for being that outlet for me. A few summers ago, I went out to visit a friend of mine who lives literally in the middle of nowhere in Central Oregon. I don't remember the exact location, but it was somewhere close to Redmond, Oregon, or Bend. Somewhere around there, where it's very desert-like, and nothing but cattle and agriculture for miles and miles. Around there, you'll see pretty much no houses, just empty, desolate farmland that never seems to end. Well, one night, my friend and I were bored and went out exploring into the large empty fields. Like I said, there's nothing out there except cows and old dilapidated houses that once were. While we were out there, the sun was just about fully set. This was summer, so it was probably right around 9 p.m. It wasn't quite night yet, so I would say in the latter half of dusk, where off in the sky, not too far away, but definitely close enough that we would notice it, was what we say a large black triangle just sitting in the sky casually. This was large enough that it both caught our attention. It was most certainly not far away. If you were to put your hands up in the air and do a diamond shape with your thumb and forefinger and put them together, it was about as big as that, sitting up in the sky. Very noticeable for anybody out driving around in the area. But it was just sitting up there in the sky, not moving, just floating there, and it was so dark that it stood out against the dark blue background of the night. My friend and I were practically freaking out. What is that thing? Is that a UFO? Or is there aliens in there? But there was no light emanating from this object. It just stayed like that. And then, after maybe about 60 seconds, is my best guess, of us staring intently at this strange black triangle in the sky, it instantly disappeared. While it was terrifying, I guess, looking back at it, my friend and I, being only 19 and 20, thought it was the coolest thing we had ever seen, since we were kinda into that anyway. You know, the whole Area 51 spiel. Unfortunately, I don't think it was in the sky for more than a minute, maybe 2 at most, and I feel like that's being extremely generous. Unfortunately, none of us had our phones on us, at least to the point where we could put our phones up and take a picture. But then again, there's so many UFO sighting videos and pictures online. I really don't feel like you need our brand of proof to prove to you that these things do exist. If you look up UFO sightings and pictures, you'll see all sorts of similar shaped looking objects online, from dark black triangles to rectangles and just about every other shape and color you can imagine. I don't know about aliens myself, man, but the entire thing was a strange thing to look back on. What a crazy sighting to have had. This occurred back in 2012. So get this. I have older family. Well, they're past now, but when they were alive, these are great-grandparents. They had a small farm or ranch, not too far out of Roswell, New Mexico, right around the exact same time the Roswell crash happened. But get this, before then, or after then, maybe it was right around that time, they were telling me, back when they were alive, and this was before they knew about the Roswell crash, that they were having their cattle abducted. They would see these strange little gray humans running out in their cattle field, taking the cattle, and beaming them up, is what they said. That was their wording. They wouldn't see any spaceships from what they told me, but they would see their cattle singled out and engulfed by a large white light, and then vanish, as if taken or vaporized. They never saw those cattle again, but they would see these small, naked, gray men walking around their cattle, my great-grandfather even firing at them multiple times. But he told me the disturbing part is that bullets didn't seem to hurt them or affect them. I'm not exactly sure how that worked out, but this plagued them for years until they finally sold everything they owned and moved to a different state entirely. Just thought I would share this with you, since you might find it of interest.